Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, my apologies, Madam Clarice Oganga, the representative of the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Kenya, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights Country Representative, Mr. Charles Kwemoy, the European Union representative, Madam Christina Berrios, the Executive Director, Haki Yetu Organization, Mr. Peter Kiama, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm here representing our Vice Chancellor, Professor Margaret Hutchinson, who is currently presiding over the rehearsals for tomorrow's 74th graduation ceremony, but should have loved to be here. I'm going to read her speech as prepared. So this is a speech by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Margaret Hutchinson, on the commemoration of International Human Rights Day in Kenya on 10th December 2025 at the University of Nairobi. On behalf of the management, faculty, and students of the University of Nairobi, I take this opportunity to welcome you all on this auspicious occasion of the commemoration of the International Human Rights Day in Kenya, celebrated annually on 10th December. This day marks the historic adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The 2025 theme, Human Rights, Our Everyday Essentials, reminds us that human rights are a fundamental to human dignity, freedom, equality, non-discrimination, and all the principles provided for in Article 10 of the Kenyan Constitution in specific, and further in the whole of Chapter 4 of the Constitution on the Bill of Rights. Celebrating the Human Rights Day is especially significant as it marks 15 years since the adoption of the 2010 Constitution, offering an opportunity to reflect on progress, achievements, opportunities, and emerging challenges ahead as the country prepares for the 2027 general elections. Additionally, the year 2025 saw Kenya make notable advances in the promotion and protection of human rights, including stakeholder consultation, the commencement of Kenya's 3-year term at the UN Human Rights Council, the completion of the country's 4th Universal Periodic Review, the appointment of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights chairperson, as well as the appointment of the IEBC commissioners after a very long period of wait, and the proposal on the compensation of victims of police brutality. I understand that to reflect on the progress achieved and emerging human rights challenges, human rights stakeholders in Kenya will commemorate the event through a high-level roundtable forum. The forum will bring together representatives from government institutions, civil society, independent commissions, academia, the private sector, social justice centers, grassroots human rights defenders, and development partners. The discussion will provide an opportunity to take stock of milestones realized under the 2010 Constitution, review the implementation of national, regional, and international human rights commitments, and identify priority actions needed to strengthen protection, participation, and accountability ahead of the 2027 general elections. In the spirit of this year's theme, and in recognition of Kenya's continued progress in advancing human rights, a series of pre-commemoration activities were planned leading up to this day, 10th December 2025. These events aim to raise public awareness, foster inclusion, and mobilize collective action around key human rights priorities. They also seek to connect ongoing national and global observances, such as those on tolerance, anti-corruption, and gender equality with Kenya's broader reflection on its human rights journey under the 2010 Constitution. UN agencies, government institutions, and civil society organizations are important partners, and collectively, their efforts should build momentum, reinforcing Kenya's commitment to dignity, equality, and justice for all. With those few remarks, once more, feel welcome at the University of Nairobi and enjoy our hospitality as you think human rights. Signed, Professor Margaret Hutchinson, Vice Chancellor and Professor of Horticulture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mashiri, and many greetings to Professor Hutchinson, and thank you very much for hosting us here in your esteemed institution. And now let's get some remarks from a representative of the civil society organizations. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to give a warm round of applause to Mr. Peter Kiama, who's the executive director of Haki Yetu organization. Karibu sana.
Good morning, people of God. Good morning. Be happy. We are commemorating, celebrating, reflecting. Let's be happy. Let's bring out some of the joy within us, because they say that joy comes from within, not from without. So share the joy you have with all of us. Our chief guest, the Principal Secretary, Justice, Human Rights and Constitutional Affairs, the Chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the representative of the Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, the European Union representative, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the UN Resident Coordinator in Kenya, all invited guests, diplomatic missions represented, my comrades in the struggle for human rights, comrade power, mpo, asante sana. I would like to humbly request all of us to be upstanding in honor of our fallen heroes in the struggle for change, for democracy, for human rights in Kenya. Tafadhali. We remember all, from the fight for independence to the latest struggle with our youth leading us at the front line, those who lost their lives, those who have been maimed, those who are still in hospital nursing wounds, those who are at home nursing psychological wounds as well. I request you sit down. This morning, I greet you all in the name of the Republic of Kenya, the republic given to us by our forefathers through blood and sweat. And I would like to lean on the articulation by the UN this day of the importance of this day and the theme of today. That human rights are lived realities and not theories, Professor. Not theories to be taught at the School of Political Science at this university. They are not theories. They are the essential foundation of dignity, safety, and opportunity in our daily lives. They are indeed the food we eat. These are not my words. I'm quoting the UN. They are indeed the food we eat, the air we breathe, the words we speak, the ceremonies we hold, the friendships we make, the opportunities we pursue, or the protections that we all seek. As we commemorate this day, I would like to remind us of the situation in our Jamhuri, our republic. A republic full of hope, rich in resources, yet abundant in contradictions. Please join me in celebrating the courage of our youth, the strong foundations set by you, their parents, and the hope that you continue to keep alive despite the odds staked against us. I would like to also us to celebrate the renewed positivity and the promise of a facilitative public benefits organizations authority, the many public servants in our republic in the three arms of government who remain steadfast in defending our constitutional values, our democracy in a very hostile environment. Even as we appreciate the positive, which seems to come in doses, starts and stops, let us not delude ourselves that our Jamhuri is healthy, that the state of the nation is good. It is not. All the State of the Nation reports this year, from October, September, October, November, and even this month, all the State of the Nation reports paint a worrying picture. Our Auditor General's report, the EACC reports paint a litany of looting, corruption, and other vices that continue to erode our journey towards fulfillment of human rights. Indeed, the EACC this week reported that they have conducted 166 integrity tests. And out of the 166 cases, 152 officers failed the test within the police service and other public institutions. The Kenya National Commission, the State Human Rights Commission, reported this week of cases of deaths and disappearances. And these reports by state agencies echo reports by various civil society organizations, including the Independent Medical Legal Unit, Amnesty International, Civic Freedoms Forum, the Police Reforms Working Group, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and many others that are here. We also see this year reports of weakening of institutions, including constitutional commissions and independent offices meant to safeguard our rights and freedoms. Ladies and gentlemen, what does this situation call us to do? I would, in my understanding, indicate to you that this situation calls for active citizenship, that this is not the time to sit back. Even as we commemorate, even as we celebrate the small victories we have, it is a time to forge stronger partnerships. It is the time to stay the course. Quoting Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing. It never did, actually. Even in this republic, it never will, unless we demand. I'm always reminded of and encouraged, I don't know whether our comrade Wanjira is here. I'm always reminded, and I'm proud of her as a comrade, what she says, when we lose our fear, sauti iko wapi leo? Ama ni kwa sababu ni asubuhi? When we lose our fear, thank you. Even as we go, if we go to scripture, yeah, it says in Matthew 7, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you, seek and knock and, yes, that is a spirit of active citizenship. Even in the kingdom of God, it says you have to ask God. He knows what you need, or she knows what you need. But you have to ask. The same with the state. Ladies and gentlemen, this day gives us all an opportunity to renew our commitment to the values and principles enshrined in the UN Declaration of Human Rights and the Constitution of Kenya 2010. May freedom reign in the Republic. Thank you very much.
I think Peter Kiama deserves a bigger round of applause, right? For helping set the stage and remind us, and even having us honor all our fallen comrades. Thank you very much, Peter, for that, and we appreciate you and the work that you do. Next, ladies and gentlemen, European Union representative Christina Barrios. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Good morning. Thank you, Peter. We stay the course. So we are going to stay the course. My name is Cristina Barrios. I am the head of the political section at the European Union delegation to Kenya. Greetings from our ambassador, whom, as you know, is not just a supporter, but a friend of human rights and the work that is done in the country. For the European Union, it is worldwide. All our bosses are issuing statements, are working hard today to stay the course, to really put this commemoration and this celebration and the happy face. I also like that we stay positive as well, even though we know about the challenges. 3 ideas in my remarks. The first one, universality. The human rights are universal values. We hear a lot about the West these days, the Western, this, that. No, it's not Western, universal. No more Kenyan than European, than Spanish, where I'm from. Universal. Let's not forget about that. Human rights are for individuals. In the era of mass influence, of economic profit, of social media, of the rise of artificial intelligence, it's actually for each of us, for individuals, for you, for me. Individuals, universal, applicable everywhere, always. Very simple, but just back to basics as we stay the course. There is conflict. There is the obligation to provide security by security forces. There is poverty. There is hardship. Sometimes these are mentioned almost as excuses to explain that, unfortunately, yes, there are human rights violations. No, this is not the way. They're applicable always, everywhere. And in those contexts, they do apply, and they should even more. On the European Union, human rights are at the core of EU internal and external action. The European Union is really not perfect. It wasn't, it is not, it will not, but we stay the course. We founded the EU after world wars, after genocide, centuries of conflict and oppression, in my own country, even dictatorship, no freedom of religion. So we created the European Union and we put human rights, democracy, and the rule of law as principles in our treaties. And then we created supranational bodies to which our states commit. And this is where we also created courts for implementing the human rights and the rule of law to help us implement the rights. So states, our member states in the European Union are formally obliged by international law to implement the defense of human rights. I really liked hearing about the Constitution in the introduction remarks, about Kenya's 15 years, about how the document is there, and about how the work is to implement the rights. I think we stay the course. We remind our states of obligations, and so do all states. They are the implementers. They are formally obliged. The European Union works closely with the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights, Kenyan human rights organizations, and the OHCHR. We are committed to raising issues of concern. I know sometimes we're mocked, very concerned, extremely concerned, a bit concerned. Well, concern, even Peter mentioned, we stay the course. We're not going to say that we give up and that we don't care, but we do keep up the work. And we will continue raising these issues in Kenya and support the human rights defenders in their efforts to demand that the Bill of Rights is respected and that we stay the course. My last point is a bit more specific, as I was thinking about essentials. And I asked my teenage son, what's your essentials? Who can guess? He's 14. What did he say? Wi-Fi. So freedom of expression, and media freedom. That's where I would call our attention to today, 2025 and beyond, as we stay the course. As the whole world, the EU is enjoying, but also trying to cope with the rise of digital platforms. We remain alert. We are working on this. Digital platforms offer avenues for free expression and new challenges as well, in terms of facilitating the spread of disinformation and online surveillance. We're tackling such challenges. And to do that in respect of human rights remains a priority of the European Union. I think in Kenya, we know what we're talking about. So do we in Europe. You will sometimes see, maybe in the news, some tensions about the EU regulations, the big tech, also these accusatory rules, bureaucracy, so on. Well, we stay the course. We keep up the work. It is actually Australia, I don't know if you saw the news, that has banned social media for under 16s, saying that they violate making competition law most of the time. It's really about how clients should have equal freedoms, equal protection. But we're not just clients, right? And the EU will continue defending and supporting rights for individuals, for humans. I want to highlight the Global Digital Compact, as we will hear from our colleagues in the United Nations, the work of the United Nations. We stay the course. It includes digital governance. It's anchored in human-centric and human rights-based approach. This is something the EU supports, and we will continue to support the work of the UN, the support for multilateral work, the support for the individual, the human, and the European Union is really pleased for your warm welcome to Kenya. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christina Barrios, for that. And now I'd like us to warmly invite and welcome Charles Kwemoy, who is the country representative of the Office of the UN Human Commissioner for Human Rights. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Charles Kwemoy. I'm the country representative for the UN Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights here in Kenya. I'm also here to stand on behalf of the resident coordinator who was not able to be here because he's on an assignment in New York. He was unable to be here. So what I have decided is that instead of reading the 3 different speeches, mine, the High Commissioner, and the resident coordinator, I have put them together just to read it as one to save time. So the representative of the Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, and thank you very much for welcoming us here. The Principal Secretary, State Department of Justice, Human Rights and Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Judith Pareno. I don't think she's arrived yet. The chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, Mrs. Clarice Okanga, my former colleague as well. The representative, the commissioners of the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, the representatives of the development partners, of course the EU and the rest of you that I have seen this morning, representatives of the civil society, and thank you for very enlightening remarks of this morning. I've seen also Amnesty International and quite a number of you represented here. We are delighted to have you here. My colleagues, the representatives for the UN agencies, funds, and programs, they are those that were very active in also preparing for this day, UNESCO, UN Women, I think an UNDP and UNIS, the information one. The academia, I'm sure some of the academics are also represented here. Distinguished guests, colleagues, friends of human rights. Today, 10th of December 2025, as the world marks the International Human Rights Day under the theme Human Rights, Our Everyday Essentials, we gather here at this great institution, the University of Nairobi, to reflect with honesty and purpose. I think the reflection is actually the one that is more critical for us. I think that many the speakers that have come before have highlighted some of the areas where progress has been made, highlighted also by the representative from the civil society. This year is significant. Kenya marks 15 years since the 2010 Constitution, a progressive framework built on shared commitment to dignity, equality, justice, and the rule of law. It's also the year the United Nations marks UN 80 years since the UN was established, reminding us that the global commitment to human rights, peace, and development remains as urgent today as it was in 1945. Kenya's constitutional vision is actually deeply aligned with this broader UN promise. That is why we thought that it's important to connect the reflection on the 2010 Constitution, which is actually a human rights constitution, to be able to use this occasion to do that reflection. The Constitution of Kenya reshaped Kenya's governance architecture. It strengthened the Bill of Rights, introduced devolution to bring services closer to the people, and created clearer checks and balances. Over the past 15 years, many laws and institutions have been aligned with this vision and with international human rights standards. These are real steps forward. Some of the things that have been outlined here that have been achieved just this year, with Kenya also being a member of the Human Rights Council, I think that quite a number of steps have been undertaken, including also the Universal Periodic Review, where Kenya actively participated, this year. So quite a lot has been achieved. The progress towards the human rights policy, the national human rights policy, which is nearing, completion, is also the progress that we recognize. Yet the lived experiences of many Kenyans reminds us that constitutional rights are still unevenly realized. Persistent gaps in access to justice, basic services, and accountable governance and equal opportunities show that some of the Constitution's most critical promises have not been fully translated into daily life. On this Human Rights Day, we emphasize that rights are not abstract, they are everyday essentials. And that is why the theme that has been chosen is really to look at human rights as these are everyday essentials, but not things that are abstract. They are the ability to feel safe, to access quality health care, to earn dignified living, to be heard and treated fairly, and to take part in local and national decisions. Regardless of who we are, where we live, or what we do, we all want same things: safety, dignity, and freedom. Doesn't matter who you are or where you live. For many, these essentials remain out of reach, and closing this gap is our shared responsibility. All the stakeholders that are here, closing this gap requires a lot of solidarity because it's a shared responsibility. To the people of Kenya, the Bill of Rights is meant to be used. When services fall short, when justice is delayed, when voices are excluded, speaking up is how rights gain meaning. You don't gain meaning by keeping quiet. Of course, when it comes to Kenya, this is definitely something that happens, that people are able to speak. So as the UN, we continue to encourage people to speak, to continue to fight for their rights whenever they feel that their rights are not, being realized. And to all the duty bearers and public officials, we know that the 2010 Constitution is a living contract with the people. Its commitments matter only when reflected in real policies, real budgets, and real services, where every person can feel their dignity is protected. That is where we see the realization of rights actually happening, in small things, in budgets, for example, in policies that are promoted, in the laws that are enacted. As we mark this milestone, let us renew our resolve to make human rights the foundation of daily life in Kenya, the United Nations and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in particular will remain steadfast and committed in supporting Kenya's efforts towards the realization of human rights for all its people. And definitely, as we have always done, we will continue to work with the Kenya National Human Rights Commission and our partners in the civil society, with the support of our development partners, to continue to support Kenya in realizing its commitments. As the UN Secretary General observed in this Human Rights Day message, together we have the power to confront injustice by protecting the institutions that make human rights a lived reality. So that means that institutions that are established to protect human rights remain really at the center and need to be protected. So our support to those institutions will remain one of our key priorities in Kenya as we move on. I wish you all the best deliberations. We will have an interesting panel to discuss some of the issues where we will highlight progress, maybe challenges that have been encountered, but also what are the gaps that remain to be fulfilled. I wish you all a happy Human Rights Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that. We appreciate your time here with us today. And now to hear from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, Ms. Clarice Oganga, who is the national chairperson, to come here and give us her remarks. It's only befitting she comes after Mr. Kwemoi, because they are former colleagues from the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner. To the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Please give her a warm round of applause, the chairperson.
Good morning, colleagues. To the PS in absentia, I understand she's on her way here. Ms. Judith Pareno, I think the first permanent secretary that we've ever had in the Department of Justice, representing issues human rights. The UN resident coordinator in absentia, Dr. Stephen Jackson, Mr. Charles Kwemoi, representative from OHCHR, EU representative Christina Barrios, Haki Yetu executive director Mr. Peter Kiama, and the representative from the university, the vice chancellor of the University of Nairobi, ambassadors, high commissioners, government agencies, representatives from civil society organizations. It's a pleasure to be here today on this Human Rights Day. But before I start, I'd like us to just stand up for 1 minute. Minute of silence for our departed chair, Ms. Roslyn Odede, who it's exactly 1 year since she departed, and it's good to honor the work that she started. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my utmost honor and pleasure to be part of this momentous occasion as we celebrate the International Human Rights Day. And it's important, as has been mentioned by other previous speakers, because it marks 78 years since the Universal Declaration on Human Rights came into being, and it also marks 80 years since the UN was established. And as you've also heard, it is 15 years since we got the Constitution of Kenya. So today we are not just marking a date on the calendar. We are reflecting on how human rights shape our daily lives every single day for every person in Kenya and across the world. This year's theme, Human Rights, Our Everyday Essentials, speaks very directly to our realities. Human rights are not distant concepts reserved for reports or courtrooms. They are the everyday guarantees that allow each one of us to learn safely, to walk with dignity, to walk our streets without fear, to access care when we are unwell, to belong in our communities, and to express ourselves freely both online and offline. So human rights provide a universal standard that holds everyone to account, both state and non-state actors, with the state actors having a higher threshold for accountability for their various acts of omission and commission, considering that state is a primary duty bearer on promotion and protection of human rights. As you've heard, Kenya as a country boasts of a robust constitution with the Bill of Rights under Chapter 4 being arguably one of the most progressive in the world, with a broad range of civil political rights, economic social rights, and also group rights for vulnerable and marginalized groups expressly affirmed. Ladies and gentlemen, as we commemorate Human Rights Day 2025 under this year's theme, we must recognize, welcome, Honorable, please. Thank you. So as we commemorate Human Rights Day 2025 under this year's theme, we must recognize that human rights are not luxuries, they are essentials. For example, when a child is denied quality education or healthcare because their parents cannot afford it, that is not just poverty, it is a denial of a basic human rights. When a peaceful protester is subjected to tear gas, live fire, or arbitrary arrest, that is not just unrest. It is a violation of civil and political rights. When a woman lives in fear of gender-based violence, or a journalist fears to report, the safety and dignity of our society is compromised. When young people cannot find dignified employment or are pushed into risky informal jobs, we are failing at securing their future and undermining human potential. So this year commemoration holds great importance as our nation marks 15 years since the enactment of the 2010 Constitution that prioritizes human dignity, equality, and social justice within our governance framework. This encourages us not only to contemplate the progress we have made, but also to renew our dedication to the path forward as the nation gradually gears up, even for the 2027 elections. The Commission recognizes the significant advancements made towards enhancing human rights frameworks, which includes extensive stakeholder formulation for the National Human Rights Policy, which we have heard is almost ready for launch, the commencement of the 3-year term of the UN at the Human Rights Council, and the successful conclusion of our 4th Universal Periodic Review. Despite the progress, however, made towards the protection and promotion of human rights, the year was marked by human rights violations that undermined the state's commitment to protection and promotion of human rights. And the Commission remains deeply concerned by shrinking civic space. And for those of you who noted that yesterday, the Kenya National Commission launched its State of Human Rights report for the period 2024 to 2025, where we reflected on progress made since the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. And we also looked at areas where there has been no progress. And you'll note that in the report, the Commission reported having documented 2,848 cases within the year of human rights violations. And you'll note that of this, economic, social, and cultural rights, including access to healthcare, education, housing, food, and social protection, remained the most violated. The launch of our report also came at the same time when civil and political rights violations remain rampant. Arbitrary arrests, enforced disappearances, torture, extrajudicial killings. And during the reporting year, the Commission recorded 57 deaths linked to the right to life, violation of the right to life, and 661 complaints of violations of the right to freedom and security of the person during this year. Further, our report highlighted how our monitoring established the presence of hooded and unidentifiable officers, the infiltration of peaceful protests, by organized groups and goons. And today morning, we were actually talking about the rise of goonism in Kenya, even as a CS of Interior launched the report Jukwaa la Salama, which has also identified the rising of organized goons. So infiltration of peaceful protests by organized goons and patterns of intimidation aimed at journalists and human rights defenders are actions that are illegal, unconstitutional, and inconsistent with Kenya's commitments under the regional and international human rights treaties, of which Kenya is a party to. Ladies and gentlemen, I call upon all stakeholders, government, civil society, communities, and individual citizens to commit to concrete steps to make human rights real and tangible in everyday Kenyan lives, even as is the theme for this year's celebration. To the government, which is ably represented in the room today, we kindly urge you to prioritize economic and social rights, expand access to affordable healthcare, ensure adequate funding for education, guarantee food and housing security, especially for the most vulnerable, and social protection for the elderly persons, persons with disability, and marginalized communities. We also call upon the government to ensure accountability for violations. We ask that you fully operationalize the National Coroner Service Act to investigate suspicious deaths, expedite investigations, especially by the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority, and look into police abuses, including enforced disappearances, torture, extrajudicial killings, and to bring perpetrators to justice. But we also ask the government to protect civic space and freedom of expression. We ask that you review or withdraw any laws or bills that threaten media freedoms, threaten civil society operations, or the right to peaceful assembly, and ensure that laws on digital rights and public order conform to constitutional guarantees. But we also ask that you put in place measures to strengthen social safety nets and youth empowerment. Invest in job creation, support youth entrepreneurship, support their mental health services, especially for activists and journalists, and put in place targeted programs, especially for marginalized rural and arid areas. As I conclude, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights also brings its commitments today as we celebrate the Human Rights Day. So on behalf of the Commission, I reaffirm our dedication to making human rights real, everyday essentials for all Kenyans through various ways that the Commission works. Number one, we commit to continue to document and report, to gather credible data on all forms of human rights violations, civil political rights, and to publish regular reports, but not just to publish, but to advocate for reforms and policy changes that will address the issues that we document. On access to justice, part of our vision is to expand our services, especially for vulnerable communities, youth, persons with disability, rural, and other marginalized communities, and ensuring that no Kenyan is denied access to justice just because of poverty or marginalization. And as I've mentioned before, we commit to continuously conduct advocacy, especially for reforms. We will continue to work with the government and parliament and also other non-state actors to push for enactment and implementation of legislation that strengthens, protects rights, including within the security sector reforms, social protection policies, and guarantees for civic space and press freedom. But one of the areas that I know the Commission has been told to put more effort is on public awareness and rights educations. We need to educate the citizenry that rights come with responsibilities, and that we must work together to ensure that we do not infringe on other people's rights, even as we are fighting for our rights. So we will continue to undertake campaigns to educate citizens, both young and old, about their rights, and to work with communities to embed human rights in everyday Kenya, including in schools, in workplaces, and in the neighborhoods. We will work very closely to support human rights defenders and journalists. We will advocate for the establishment of formal protection mechanisms because we know that's one of the areas that we really need to do something to provide protection for those of us who defend rights. So we are hoping that with the collaborative effort, we will push for legal protection and also rapid response support when defenders face threats, and we will also continue to monitor attempts to shrink civic space. So for the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, our commitment is to continue working with all partners to move this country towards a true human rights culture. And in doing so, we affirm that human rights are indeed our everyday essentials and not a privilege for a few, but a lived reality for all persons in Kenya. So human rights are our everyday essentials for everyone, everywhere. Haki kwa wote, kila wakati, which is the motto for the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Thank you very much for listening to me. And at this juncture, allow me to invite our chief guest, Honorable Permanent Secretary, Honorable Judith Pareno, as I've mentioned, the first ever PS within this particular ministry. Karibu sana, our chief guest.
You will forgive those of us who are a bit short, but I hope you'll be able to see me past this podium thing. Good morning. Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the United Nations and development partners, esteemed colleagues from government, ministries and independent commissions, members of civil society, academia, professional bodies, the private sector, fellow citizens, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning again. My name's Judith Pareno, the PS for Justice, Human Rights and Constitutional Affairs. And it is an honor to join you at this commemoration of International Human Rights Day, a day that reminds us that dignity, equality, and justice are not privileges, but rights, essentials. Ladies and gentlemen, 77 years ago, the world adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Since then, humanity has made remarkable progress in embedding rights into governance, law, and development. Yet across globe, challenges exist and persist. Conflicts continue to displace millions. Climate change threatens livelihoods and survival. The digital revolution brings both opportunities and risk, from artificial intelligence to surveillance. This year's theme, Human Rights, Our Everyday Essentials, call us to reaffirm that rights are not abstract ideals, but they are foundation of daily life. Ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, we stand at a crossroads. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights has guided our continent for decades, and regional institutions continue to champion accountability and inclusion. Yet we face pressing realities. Civic space is shrinking in many countries. Youth across the continent demand greater participation, transparency, and justice. And emerging issues such as climate impact, digital governance, and economic inequality require urgent responses. Kenya, as a member of the African Union and a current member of the UN Human Rights Council, has a responsibility to lead by example. Our reforms and innovations must inspire confidence, not only within our borders, but across the region. Ladies and gentlemen, here at home, Kenya has made significant strides at the 4th Universal Periodic Review in May 2025. Our record was positively assessed with recognition of reforms in justice, policing, and governance. This achievement was not accidental. It was the result of deliberate coordination, transparency, and inclusivity. The State Department of Justice worked hand in hand with civil society, independent commissions, and development partners to ensure that Kenya's report reflected both our progress and our challenges. This participatory approach strengthened credibility and demonstrated that Kenya is willing to subject itself to scrutiny, a hallmark of a rights-respected democracy. Beyond the universal periodic review, we have developed practical tools that bring human rights closer to every life. The Human Rights Due Diligence Framework and the Model Grievances Mechanism for Business are pioneering instruments in Africa. They ensure that corporate actors, whether in agriculture, extractives, finance, or technology, integrate human rights into their operations. These frameworks are not abstract. They provide step-by-step guidance for companies to identify risks, prevent violations, and provide remedies when harm occurs. They also empower communities to hold business accountable, creating a culture where profit and rights are not in conflict, but in harmony. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also revising the national human rights policy to reflect realities of our time. Regional consultation across counties have brought diverse voices to the table. The youth, women, persons with disability, grassroots defenders, and marginalized communities. Their contributions are shaping a policy that is not only nationally owned by but also globally relevant. For instance, climate change is no longer a distant environmental issue. It is a human rights issue affecting food security, health, and livelihoods. Artificial intelligence and digital governance are no longer futuristic concept. They are present realities that influence privacy, access to information, and equality of opportunity. By integrating these emerging issues, Kenya is positioning itself as a leader in forward-looking human rights governance. Our strides are also evident in accountability mechanisms. Active discussions are underway to criminalize enforced disappearances, a reform that will align Kenya with international standards and responses. And responses to long-standing concerns from civil society. This is a bold step, acknowledging past grievances while charting a path toward justice. At the same time, strengthened collaboration with oversight bodies such as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, and the international partners like the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights has improved monitoring of state compliance, and I thank you for that. We've really engaged. These partnerships ensure that accountability is not episodic, but systematic. Equally important are our efforts to expand access to justice. Legal aid clinics, prison visits, and service weeks have brought rights closer to the grassroots. Citizens who once felt excluded from the justice system are now finding avenues to seek redress. Civic education campaigns are reinforcing the message that rights are everyday essentials, not privileges reserved for the elite, but entitlements for every Kenyan, regardless of status or location. These initiatives are building trust between citizens and institutions, a trust that is indispensable as we prepare for 2027 general elections. Yes, we must candidly acknowledge ongoing challenges. The aftermath of the Gen Z's protests of June 2024 revealed gaps in accountability and safeguards for freedom of assembly. These events reminded us that while our Constitution guarantees the right to peaceful protest, the practical realization of this right requires vigilance, restraint, and respect for due process. Concerns regarding police conduct during the protest, including reports of excesses and arbitrary arrests, are the subject of ongoing investigations. These matters highlight the importance of continuing to strengthen oversight institutions and reinforcing the commitment of our security agencies to operate within the framework of the law, accountability, and respect for human rights and dignity. Concerns regarding the safety of human rights defenders have drawn significant attention, both nationally and internationally. Human rights defenders remain the conscience of our society and democracy, amplifying the voices of the vulnerable and holding institutions accountable. When their work is hindered or they face threats, the impact is felt across society. Safeguarding their role is therefore not optional. It is both a constitutional duty and a moral responsibility that we are striving to make sure it happens. Marginalized groups also continue to face systematic barriers in accessing justice, healthcare, and economic opportunities. Women, children, persons with disabilities, and communities in remote areas often encounter obstacles that deny them equal participation in national life. Emerging risks from digital surveillance, climate impacts, and economic inequality further compound these vulnerabilities. These realities remind us that progress must be inclusive and that no Kenyan should be left behind in the enjoyment of rights. Ladies and gentlemen, to address these challenges, the State Department for Justice, Human Rights, and Constitutional Affairs is advancing key measures. We are deepening public engagement through legal aid clinics, human rights service weeks, and civic education campaigns. These initiatives bring justice closer to the grassroots, empower citizens to know and claim their rights, and reinforce the message that human rights are everyday essentials. We are also integrating emerging issues, climate change, artificial intelligence, and digital governance into our human rights frameworks. By doing so, Kenya is preparing for the future, ensuring that our policies remain relevant and responsive to the challenges of our rapidly changing world. Ladies and gentlemen, as we mark 15 years of the 2010 Constitution, let us remember that its promise was not only to enshrine rights in law, but to make them lived realities for every Kenyan. On this International Human Rights Day, let us commit ourselves to ensure that human rights remain our everyday essentials, guiding our policies, shaping our institutions, and inspiring a collective future. I thank you.
Can we give her another warm round of applause? The Principal Secretary, State Department of Justice. Asante sana. And I think, like was said, first PS in that State Department. We now want to have this conversation here. And remember, like we said, we're having this conversation here on the podium, and we'd also like to hear from you. So please feel free and ready to engage with us. We're going to be taking a look at human rights in the country, 15 years of the Constitution of Kenya, challenges, but also some of the areas of transformation that we have seen towards guaranteeing human rights as everyday essentials for every citizen. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call up members of my panel, starting with Eric Kivuva, who is the chair of the Law Society of Kenya, Nairobi chapter. Please join us here. Also, we have Dr. Bernard Mogesa, who's the CEO of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Karibu sana, Daktari. And then from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, we have with us Francis Makori. Francis Makori, are you here with us? Tafadhali, make your way here. Thank you very much. And then we also have Ms. Editor Adhiambo Ochieng, who's the Executive Director of the Feminist for Peace, Rights and Justice Center. Editor, did I see you here a little earlier? All right. We will have you join us when you get here. From the National Police Service, Inspector Charles Otiende, who's a Commissioner of Police and Deputy Director, Legal Affairs at the National Police Service, who is also here with us. And then we also have Irungu Houghton, who is the Amnesty International Executive Director. Karibu sana. And because we don't have editor, let me invite also here to join us on stage Annette Wamboy, who's a Senior Legal Officer at the National Cohesion Integration Commission. Annette? Annette? Karibu. Annette, please come join us here on stage as we have this conversation with us. We are also expecting the CEO of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, Ahmed Isaac Hassan. Do I see you, Bwana CEO? All right, thank you very much. So let's get this conversation started. Maybe, Eric, the place to begin is you. 15 years of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010. In many circles, we still call it the new Constitution. And as far as constitutions go, it's still fairly new at the age of 15. But in your view, how has it transformed the country with respect to delivery of justice, governance, and the protection?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yvonne. My name is Eric Kibuva, as stated. Just a small clarification that I chair the LSK Nairobi branch. I say it's a branch because within the branch, it has 2 other chapters. That is Thika chapter and Kiambu chapter. Nairobi branch also hosts 80% of all the advocates in Kenya. So thank you very much, Yvonne, and even for this opportunity to have this very essential discussion. And I think when I look at the very transformative 2010 Constitution, one of the things that I think it has really changed, especially on the rule of law and access to justice, is even the manner in which our judiciary has been fashioned. We note that before coming into being of the 20 Constitution, there was what we call the transitional vetting of judges. And this was basically to get rid of the people who had been thought as not being fit to hold this position. But even more importantly, under the Constitution, now the employment or the recruiting of judges became a more transparent thing, so that we now had a public vetting, or rather a public interviewing of judges. And also there is the security of tenure for judges and magistrates, which has basically made the judiciary more courageous and to a great extent given it the life that would make it indeed the third arm of government. Because a lot of the time the executive, the legislature are seen as being maybe the only arms of government that matter, while in actual sense, the judiciary is the third arm of government and it should have a level of equality. The Constitution of Kenya assumes or wants that character to come into life. But then the big question on whether or not that has been realized is still out there. And I think one of the things and one of the challenges that that we have on matters access to justice is budget cuts. I was just doing a comparative analysis and I noted that the NIS received a budget allocation of about 51.7 billion Kenya shillings for the 2025-2026 budget cycle. Compare that to the judiciary, a third arm of government. They received about 27.8 billion. And when I talk about budget, you know, because every time the conversation on money begins, people switch off because they think we're just complaining for the heck of it. I want to bring the reality to you in this sense. Makadara Law Courts, which basically handles a lot of criminal justice matters, is serving about 47 police stations. This is a court station that has maybe just about 5 courtrooms serving 47 police stations. And that is why not so long ago we had the shooting of a magistrate within Makadara Law Courts, because they were even operating, or rather running, a court from a temporary structure just to try and meet the demand for access to justice. So when budget cuts occur, we have such scenarios. There is the issue of recruitment of judges. For us to be able to recruit judges, build the right court infrastructure, the judiciary needs to be treated better as the third arm of government when it comes to budgetary allocation. Of course, there is the whole other challenge of corruption within the judiciary. And to some extent, you may want to tie the frustration that come with operating in that kind of environment to what is happening when we see a lot of the judicial officers basically just giving up, turning into alcoholism and so on and so forth. We are losing them because they're operating in an environment that is so stressful. And that also leads to instances of corruption. Because if we had facilitated our judiciary in the proper manner, then we will have our magistrates, for example, operating in a better environment. And so corruption still remains a big challenge, but it is a challenge that I believe all the justice sectors players are playing a crucial role to ensure that it is something that we take care of once and for all. And there has been the conversation on whether we need another vetting of judges and magistrates. It is a conversation that is growing. It is a conversation that I believe.
So for you, in terms of access to justice, it is about strengthening and empowering the third arm of government, which is the judiciary. And this is not just about money for its own sake, but that it has direct effects towards the access of justice for Kenyan citizens. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm basically saying.
Okay.
And it is so critical. You know, for me, I do not think there can be dignity, there can be equality, there can be observance of human rights without justice, and more so access to justice.
Okay, that's a good place, and that's one of the institutions that we're focusing on. Maybe when we take a look at the broader institutions, the national policies, from the perspective of the National Commission on Human Rights, Dr. Mogesa, what do you think has been the role of these policies, these institutions, in safeguarding human rights? Do you think there have been some gains, and what more do we need to do to ensure tangible protection for all Kenyans by these institutions? Sorry, for Dr. Mogesa now.
When you look at Chapter 4 of our Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the various laws that have been passed by Parliament and the policies that have been enacted, it becomes very critical. For instance, when you talk about the human rights policy, which is under review right now, we were so much happy in 2014 when this policy came into force. But then the question of implementing and evaluating this particular policy became a big challenge. Yes, indeed, we have policies that are passed, but then we do not have commensurate budgets with the institutions that are supposed to oversight the implementation of those policies. Then secondly, policies sometimes can be very elitist. When you look at our rural, environments, for example, how do we translate these policies into the languages that our people, for instance, can be able to understand? So yes, policies are good, but how do they translate, to the local populations? The human rights policy, which is undergoing, review right now, is a good move, but then we must also rethink of how we are going to source for the implementation and monitoring of the progress of that policy. Secondly, when we talk about the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, and of course Kenya being the first African country, and we acknowledge this, to have in place such a very crucial, policy. The questions then we need to answer are, one, how does this policy translate into the enjoyment of human rights? When you look at the economic and social cultural rights that we have documented as violations, again, you would see that this policy in a way is not directly addressing those challenges. For example, labor violations, child labor in a number of our areas, businesses violating human rights, and which have been, documented by the commission. When you look at the conservancies and human rights, our national parks, the human-wildlife conflict, for example, how is this policy helping the citizens down there to enjoy their human rights? And there are quite a number of policies that have been put in place, but the greatest challenge we have as a country is how do we translate this to the bottom and also allocate resources that would ensure that these policies indeed are implemented to ensure that the intended course of action is achieved.
So what are some of the practical steps to make sure that those policies don't just remain on paper and they actually translate into tangible human rights benefits for Kenyans?
Number one, once we have these policies, as I've already indicated, let us have a commensurate budget, very clearly known that for this policy, the government is putting this particular amount to ensure that there is awareness about the policy, bring together the key players who are going to implement that policy. We document the achievements and the challenges and deal with those challenges as well. And how do they then spill even to Parliament to look at whether we have some gaps in terms of the legislation so that they can also address them. So awareness, and then translating them into a language that citizens can understand and fully participate in the implementation of those policies. That's where I see a great challenge and something that needs to be done.
Right, and you're both speaking about the issue of budgetary allocation, in essence, putting your money where your mouth is. And some of these policies are also good on paper. Here's another policy that is good on paper, and maybe we can talk about how good it is in action. How many signs do you see across buildings that say this is a corruption-free zone? It's a great policy. We have a whole chapter on integrity in the Constitution. It's good on paper. This is what we're supposed to do. This is how leaders should conduct themselves. This is how citizens should conduct themselves. Yet another good policy, well-intentioned, well-meaning. But what are some of the practical steps and actions, Francis, do you see from the position of the EACC, that's the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, towards taming corruption so as to enhance access to rights?
Thank you, Yvonne, for that. Some of the practical actions would touch directly to issues that really affect the citizenry, particularly from a point of view that anti-corruption efforts are directly linked to, enjoyment of human rights. The lower corruption levels we have, it means the environment under which we can enjoy human rights become even wider. One of the actions is asset recovery, and the 2010 Constitution really bolstered the efforts of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission by entrenching it into the Constitution. Before that, it was just a creator of a statute. Being a creator of a statute would mean that it could not take very concise practical actions. So one of the actions is asset recovery, in the sense that the Commission focuses on recovering assets from corrupt individuals and converting it back and making it available for public utility. Over time, while criminal justice and avenue has been very effective, but over time, we also realize that asset recovery would deny the culprit from enjoying proceeds of crime. So that assuming someone steals 100 million shillings and is jailed, and that proceed still remains in his bank account, what would happen after he gets out? He would still enjoy it, and he would still, benefit out of it. So one of the practical action has been asset recovery. Secondly, a key sector institution is on how to prevent bribery and corruption, and also to encourage reporting of corruption. One of the key legislation that the Commission focus had been fighting corruption in the public sector. But under that act, it provides for avenue of developing corruption prevention that we are facing is that to date, since 2010, we are yet to enact the Whistleblower Protection Act. And that legislation that would really boost in terms of corruption prevention and protection. It is our hope that Parliament would fast track the same. And it's interesting that you mentioned about corruption-free zone. As I was walking in, that is one of the signs I noted. And what came to my mind, if you were to do a survey in this place, are we likely to get a positive, or how would the survey look like if we randomly ask people, do you feel this corruption? So the essence is that as a society also, we are really working with the society in terms of public awareness as one of the actions to really employ especially the youth through the digital platform to help us work with the Commission in raising awareness and to make corruption intolerant, so that corruption should bother you as an individual, as it bothers us as an institution entrusted to fight it. And then lastly, Yvonne, I would like to mention that one of the actionable areas is integrity verification. One of the key things under Chapter 6 that Kenyans expected upon promulgation of the Constitution was that any person joining public service, particularly, should be a person who has integrity, a person who demonstrates ethical leadership, a person who believes in good governance. That's why in all the recruitment or advertisement for recruitment, usually you see that requirement that you must meet the requirements of Chapter 6. It's a critical element that really helps us to promote human rights, because if you have a person who practices ethical leadership, you have very high chances that he will be a defender and a promoter of human rights.
And how's that going?
One of the challenges of implementing Chapter 6 has been weak law enforcement, and we've been engaging Parliament to see a way of amending the law so that the Commission is clothed with some power to implement. One instance that I would mention is this, and it touches on elections. What the current legal architecture provides when we are verifying the integrity of persons seeking elective offices is that they will fill that form under Leadership and Integrity Act. We will look at the form and the requirements, and then we would check whether or not the person has integrity issues. But the most we can do is to inform another independent commission, the IBC, and tell them, from our end, we seem to have questions about integrity, but we do not have that enforcement mechanism that my co-panelist mentioned. So it's an area that going forward, as we assess post 15 years, it's an area that we need to enforce, improve, enhance, and see a way on how we can actually enforce. And during elections, also during public awareness, we really implore upon citizenry and the youth that you can also vet and weed out the people seeking public offices when you are exercising your right during elections. So that generally, if there are issues surrounding that particular candidate, it would really help if he's not elected into public office. So that from the word go is out. Because once he gets in and then ESCC comes on board, there's a court process, it becomes a bit complicated.
So that matters of integrity are dealt with at all levels, not just at yours when you raise a red flag, but then the investigating authorities as well as the electorate as well to make that decision about who they want in office. One of the other things that the Constitution did was to put in place measures to have a national police service that is independent, and in fact it was changed from a force to a service, and to ensure its independence and to ensure that there's a human rights based approach towards policing. And so, Inspector Otiende, perhaps we can talk about how the Kenyan police and oversight agencies are working together to, first of all, build trust in the community, enhance accountability, and of course, policing, core work of the police service.
Thank you, Yvonne, for that opportunity. I would want to start by correcting that the inspector is a misnomer in my name. I'm Charles Otiende, Commissioner of Police. Secondly, I want to say that police is, in fact, foremost human rights defender, and that is exemplified by the fact that we protect human freedoms and rights. And I want to say that in an effort to work towards paving that proper communication with the mwananchi, we have various strategies that we are putting in place, especially in our training. First of all, we have integrated in our training institutions human rights lessons, and they have in fact been given many man hours, at least not like before. And again, we employ a lot of community policing, and besides that, we, even in our training institutions, we often invite the members of the civil society to come and give extra lectures even to our recruits and even those attending promotional courses. So that is number one. We also have increased our partnerships with the oversight authorities, both internal and which is a part of the police service, but he also investigates excesses and complaints that are forthcoming from wananchi and even the police officers themselves against other police officers. IPOA, that is the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, is a body that is in fact in the statute that is empowered to oversight police service, and in case there are instances of excesses, we are we in fact allow them, or not allowing in fact, but that is, they are vested with that authority to investigate police and even take them to court. In fact, we don't investigate our own cases involving police officers. That is a preserve of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Another way of bringing the police closer to mwananchi is, I want to state this one. It's a very robust one. Recently, we rolled out a program. This program has been christened Silo. Silo here is Station Youth Liaison Officers. This program has been rolled out by the Inspector General only recently, and it trains station police commanders on integrating youth and their affairs. This station youth liaison officer has been empowered to engage the youth and especially find out what their problems are and especially engage them even in sporting activities and stuff like that as a way of bringing police closer to the mwananchi. In the course of these interactions with the youth, the police actually give the youth the opportunity to also ask questions and even criticize where there is need to, and then responses are prepared, and at the end of the day they get quite contented. And this particular pilot program has been started in the counties that are close to Nairobi, that is Nairobi, Kajiado County, and Machakos, and Kiambu. But the Inspector General continues to roll it out, and we have our focus is that all the 47 counties are trained and empowered to that end. And not only that, I mentioned that we also foster community policing, and we actually have very robust directorates within all the services of the police. That is the Kenya Police Service, Administration Police Service, and even the DCI. And they go out, they have outreaches, they have activities out there that engage the mwananchi effectively. And even most recently, the Jukwaa ya Usalama, it actually gave the police and the ministry an opportunity to engage with the wananchi and find out what actually perhaps could be bedeviling the policing and stuff like that.
Okay, some practical steps. It would be interesting to see the full rollout of, you call them station youth liaison officer. 4 counties now, right? And hopefully, sure. Yeah, okay. From the perspective of IPOA, perhaps we can have you give us your views. I don't know if we have, do we have an extra mic that we can bring down here? Do we? Okay, it's fine. Thank you very much. That's some good partnership there, right?
Thank you, Charles. Yvonne, first of all, let me clarify. This chairperson of IPOA is Ahmed Isaac Hassan. The CEO is Mr. Elema Alake. I am not him. My name is Festus Kinoti. I am the Director Legal Services standing in for him today. His apologies for not being able to make it for this session. Let me start by saying, when we are talking about human rights, our everyday essentials, I was thinking about what is an essential for somebody who interacts with the police every day. And since the 2010 Constitution, Yvonne, IPOA was established only 2 years after the 2010 Constitution. And IPOA's establishment is linked to the change in which we sought to have a new constitution. Because if you're talking about the new constitution 2010, you also must go back to the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And that is where the seed for the establishment of IPOA was born, in terms of a need to have a civilian oversight mechanism over the National Police Service. And what the 2010 Constitution did is it sought to transform the police from a force, as you said, into a service. And what it did is in Article 244, it put certain principles that the police must then operate under, which includes compliance with human rights, professionalism, and accountability. And then it established IPOA in 2011 to basically give effect to those dictates of the Constitution. So what IPOA is meant to do, if you look from 2012 when it was established, is to oversight the National Police Service on behalf of the citizen. And what you need to oversight the National Police Service is to have a National Police Service that is actually rooted in democratic policing. You cannot oversight National Police Service that is not rooted in democratic policing. Oversight will fail. And what we've seen in since 2012, the authority has received about 35,000 complaints. We've been able to resolve about 31,000 complaints. We have a backlog of about 4,000 complaints that we are currently dealing with in terms of investigations. During that year, we've also rolled out to 9 regional offices, and we also have a toll-free line where people can report complaints. In fact, if you look at the trend in terms of complaints brought to the authority, there's a trend in which complaints are increasing and the resolution of those complaints increase as Kenyans get more comfortable with the civilian oversight mechanism. We also have regulations that allow the citizenry now, if you, for instance, have a case against a police officer, you don't have to go to the police station to get a P3 form. You can actually just get the P3 form from IPOA and record your complaint. Also, for pathologists who need to conduct postmortems in cases involving, alleged wrongful death caused by police officers, they can get IPOA postmortem forms and use them. So the authority has tried to, in those years, to try and resolve as many complaints as it can. But there are challenges, and we must accept that there are actually challenges in terms of oversight and accountability. The relationship between the police and IPOA has been one whereby in sometimes you find that when oversight is needed, you have a democratic police. When oversight is being resisted, then you have a police that tries to go back to what is called a police force. I must say, but in the previous years with the new IG, the relationship has been better and more cooperation. But we need to have more in terms of support to IPOA. The authority from 2017, in terms of budgetary allocation, has only received about 60% of what it needs in terms of budgetary allocation. This financial year, 25-26, in terms of operations, it only received 30% of what it needs in terms of budgetary allocation. In terms of human resource, the authority is operating with only 20% of what it needs in terms of human resource. We have recruited 10,000 more police officers who are coming in. The authority currently, with the current police force, is operating to 20%. If you increase 10,000 more police officers, that number goes down to about 10% of what it actually needs to oversight the police. So I think at a certain point as Kenyans, we also have to look to ourselves and ask ourselves, if we want a civilian oversight mechanism that works and actually investigate all police-related cases, then it must be funded to the adequate budgetary allocation. It must be given the right human resource that can actually be able to match the function that it is required to do. And also it must be given the right legislative tools in terms of legal framework. Kenyans want an agile IPOA, that can swing into action, and where a police officer, for instance, is seen brazenly offending, for instance, is arrested. But the authority currently does not have arrest powers. It cannot do it. The authority does not have prosecutorial powers. The authority recommends prosecution. So, for instance, in 2022, for those who would remember, there was a shooting in terms of public order management that happened in Masimba. The authority made recommendation for prosecution. Those recommendations were not taken, and the matter went for a public inquest. The court at the public inquest has now, again, recommended prosecution. 3 years later, if the authority had prosecutorial powers, this would have been done in 2022. And there are many more other cases that I could point out. The point I'm making is, Yvonne, as Charles has said, yes, there is an oversight mechanism, and yes, there is increased cooperation with the police, but more needs to be done if we are to have proper oversight over the National Police Service. If you look across where the authority was established is South Africa. That's where we borrowed the concept of Independent Policing Oversight Authority from the Independent Policing Investigative Directorate in South Africa. If you look at that institution has arrest powers, for instance. They can arrest police officers who commit wrongful acts. That provision IPOA does not have. They have a bigger budget. They have more human resource personnel, yet IPOA does not have that personnel. And so as we continue, of course, there are huge strides IPOA has made, including the first case under the International Crimes Act ever brought into this country and ever in Africa in terms of public order management. But for the authority to actually hit what the public wants it to do, more needs to be done in terms of support to the authority. Thank you, Yvonne.
Yeah, thank you, Festus. And it's so interesting that you talk about that 20% of staff to oversee, over 130,000 officers, to oversight, rather, over 130,000 police officers. You've talked about presence in 9 regions. And how many police stations do we have across the country? 3,000, thereabouts? 1,100 versus 9. So, I mean, you can see that that role is severely hampered. I want to take a look at this from the grassroots, because that's what you're talking about in terms of delivery of justice. Editor, look, we're talking about all the institutions here, what should happen, the EACC, IPOA, oversight, and that sort of thing. And yet, thank you very much. And yet there's also the issue of the grassroots. So is any of this meaning anything in terms of gender participation, youth inclusion, human rights initiatives at the community level? Everything we've said about good policy on paper, witness protection, the Whistleblower Act. What does this mean when you hear this conversation? Maybe we can return the mic back. Yes, we can. Thank you, Eric. She's over there. Editor, yeah.
Wow.
Are we just talking? Does this sound like, all very nice things, but then where the rubber meets the road with human rights for individuals at the community level, what's your experience?
First of all, thank you so much. My name is Editor Thiambo. I come from Kibera, and I remind people that I come from Kibera University. It is a school of experience with paperless degree, grassroots. So first of all, I want to appreciate this conversation because today is our day as human rights defenders, defending human rights. But again, the strides that we've made as a country, to be sincere, to be where we are today, we need to celebrate it. But again, at the same time, also we need to analyze the gaps that we're experiencing as a country, especially in the grassroots level. I love the idea of silo, and I'm just looking at Kibera, where I come from. If it can make essence to us as Kibera community, because most of the time, the police that are in our communities, I will say like 98% of them are not even friendly, number one, to young people and even women. Every day when we report cases of sexual and gender-based violence, or rather gender-based violence cases, we don't get receptive police. This is a reality at the grassroots level. But again, with the other percentage, and like last year, from 2020, working with OHCHR, it has been really easier because we've really tried to strengthen the relationship of the police and human rights defenders and the community. Right now, I'll say it is better off, not like other years. But again, when we look at young people and what we're experiencing in this country today, number one, youth cannot participate in these governance processes when they're not economically empowered. And everyone knows what I'm talking about. When you are angry, when you are hungry, you'll wake up in the morning and what you'll think about is paying your bills, food on the table. So it makes young people to engage in other processes, thinking about we need only to pay our bills rather than participating in meaningful processes of governance of this country. Another thing is I'm looking at even the political consciousness of young people and women. And one of the things that we've been enabled to do is civic engagement. And we saw it even during femicide march in this country, which again, the state was not supportive when women were killed in this country. And even now women are killed on a daily basis. When powerful people, for example, Obado was alleged for the death of Sharon, and we are not getting like proper mechanisms to make him accountable for this death. The police even sector, to be sincere, was not very, very supportive. And when we were on the streets seeking for justice, again, you are tear gassed and women are killed in this country. And I think also conversation needs to go directly to such experiences. We know what constitution associating and also the freedom of maandamano. But again, in this country, when you want to express yourself, the police will be there and they're the first people to hit on you. The police, when they're on the uniform, the police of this country, when they're wearing their uniform, they forget that they are citizens of this country. They forget about the power of constitution. They forget that we need, it is our responsibility as Kenyans, as young people, as women of this country, to ensure that we are actualizing this constitution so that at least we can sustain all the ideologies and we can adopt to this constitution, because it is Kenyan constitution. After so many years living under colonization, under slavery regime, and again, as a country, we are still experiencing black supremacy. I think it is really hard for young people. So I'm not yet complain, but again, also just looking at solution that we need to provide for young people, like even politically, we have 47 women representative. But again, I'm thinking about young people who are left. What if we also push to have young people who can represent young people affair at the grassroots level, young people from different diversity to just enable to sit in these positions. As a movement, also, it is important to think about how do we engage young people and women meaningfully by strengthening youth movements through coalition building and intergenerational leadership, which is really lacking. We've seen that in social media, the gap between older generation, and if older generations want to share their stories, they start by, unajua ile siku sisi tulikuwa tunasoma, tulikuwa tunaweka mguu zetu kwa maji baridi ndio tusome. Romanticizing struggles, problems, and poverty. So there is a huge gap that we need to fix as a country and invest in proper mentorship for young people and also in intergenerational learning. Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Editor, for those thoughts. And you know, just as you talk about exercising those, I think we can just, Dr. we can keep one roaming. Maybe Timothy, was it? You can assist me with that one, to just keep the mic there, because we will be coming back to the plenary in a moment. But you know, Editor has talked about the freedom of speech, the freedom of association, most of which is now, by our increasingly youthful population, is now exercised in the digital spaces, Irungu. And online freedoms has also become a big area of debate. There's data protection, there's freedom of speech, there's freedom of association, you know, that is taking place in the online space, which was easier at some point. But now there are certain challenges that we face there. So what can be done to continue to ensure that these rights are enshrined, particularly in the digital space, that is also now becoming a challenge in terms of, you know, human rights on that space?
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And first of all, let me say that this is a celebratory moment for all of us. I think in many ways, we work the 364 days to protect human rights, to promote it, but there's one day where we come together to see how well have we done and what I guess the year ahead would look like. Before I get into the digital conversation, I just like to also just remind ourselves of some of the courage that we have seen this year. So we did pay homage and respect to Rosalind Odede, but allow me to also say, Feroz Novoroji, long live! Let me try that again. Feroz Novoroji, long live! Raila Odinga, long live! Pamela Kola, long live! Now you may be wondering who Pamela Kola is, but Pamela Kola was my kindergarten teacher. And
That
she
makes
saved
us
me.
age mates because she taught me in kindergarten as well.
Yeah.
Dr. Pamela Kola, yeah.
And now I'm going to have to say something a little bit longer than I was going to. She saved me
Great
from a child's
educationist.
marriage at the age of 5. And I have to say it wasn't Yvonne.
Certainly
But
not.
she
yeah.
believed in the right to education
Yeah.
and the right to recreation as young people.
Mm-hmm.
So I always, she's being buried this weekend. So I keep a moment for her also in this space.
Yeah.
Let's keep a moment for the memory of Bridget Wainaina, the 12-year-old girl who was shot during the protest in July. Long live Bridget Wainaina, long live! Long live the whistleblower, the Mwalimu Albert Ojwang, who was killed less than half a kilometer from here. Long live Albert Ojwang, long live! Long live to Boniface Mwangi, Boniface Kariuki, who was killed about a kilometer from here on Koinange Street. Long live! And long live to Benedict Washira, the police officer that was sent to Haiti to try and protect Haitians from the gangs there. Long live Benedict, long live! We could go on, and I would ask you to just recall some of the names of the people that have inspired you over this year, because I think, as P.S. Judith said, human rights defenders are the conscience of the nation. And actually, unfortunately, she has left. But I was going to ask her the next time a human rights defender is arrested or is abducted or disappears, I want to see a direct statement from the Principal Secretary for Constitutional Affairs, Justice and Human Rights, because I think then we would start to see something shifting in this country. It does not always have to be the Police Reforms Working Group, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Can we start to see the executive hold the National Police Service directly accountable for the excesses that we have seen? Before I come to the digital conversation, you know, this year we experienced 65 killings by police officers in barely 2 months, in the months of June and July. We saw 1,500 people in conflict with the law over that period. 75 of them were charged under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And we have seen up to 18 deaths apart from Albert Ojwang in police stations. 5 people were killed mourning Raila Odinga, right? Now, if you put these figures together and compare it to the previous year, because I remember being in this space a year ago, speaking about the violence that we've seen against protesters, we actually have seen no statistical difference from the previous year. So I think we have to ask the question, what is not happening that we are unable to bring this pattern of violence to an end? Allow me now to shift to the conversation on digital rights. By show of hands, how many of you here touched your smartphone before you touched your toothbrush this morning? Just raise your hands. This is a hygiene question.
That's everybody, right?
Right, everybody. How likely are you to touch your smartphone after you brush your teeth tonight? Raise your hands.
Maybe even during, while. You brush your teeth while you're scrolling on your phone. I don't know.
Okay, those are the people who are like ambidextrous. So one of the things we have to recognize is, although it wasn't in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and although even in 2019, we were basically not aware of how this would shift for us in an everyday context, digital rights are now everyday essentials, right? So I think this theme is probably one of the most interesting ones for 2025. As we celebrate International Human Rights Day, let's remind ourselves of the universal promise that everybody, not just some people, but everybody is entitled to dignity, to freedom, and to equality. But the reality is, there are 3 major challenges that we face that are very new, and they are perversely attacking each and every one of us. The first is unchecked surveillance. And what has become now, I guess, a word for some of us, which is digital authoritarianism. The idea that technology, which was once designed essentially to keep us all safe from, I guess, serious criminals, terrorists, and others, can now be used against average citizens expressing their rights. We are now very aware of the dangers of mass data breaches. The last week has been very interesting in terms of the Kenyan government and the United States government entering into a health partnership without undergoing a public participation on the information, the private health data that will be availed under that deal. Now, of protests and online challenging, we have now seen at least the signed copies of the health partnership agreement. And I think we've also now seen in the public domain the Data Protection Act. What we know from that is that the initial drafts that essentially gave the United States government and US pharmaceutical companies 25 years of access to Kenyan health data, that essentially has been pulled back. That what we have now is an agreement that is a 5-year agreement. Now, this would not have been a debate 5 years ago. So big data and the access to big data is the second big challenge that we have. The third big data challenge, I think, is the idea that algorithms, rather than human beings, will determine policy for us. So if you're not aware of this already, SHA-SHIF is largely being designed around an algorithm that will determine how much you should be paying for health insurance. It is going to determine how much capitation students will receive based on their income. There has been an attempt over the last 2 finance bills, and thank you to a number of organizations here present and also the Gen Zs for knocking this particular provision. But there was an attempt to give access to KRA of all our e-data, which goes through our phones, and that is our money, e-money platforms. Now, once they had got access to that, they would be in a position not only to assess how much you should be paying, but they are moving to a regime that will essentially determine for you what your taxes should be, rather than you voluntarily telling them what your obligations were. And you will pay a deposit, like you'll pay an initial payment, while you negotiate how the machine has actually got your taxes wrong. So I want you to just get that we are on the cusp of a different society, a digital economy, a digital democracy. And if we do not have the right checks and balances in place, what is going to happen is that we're going to find our privacy essentially put online for others to be able to manage for us. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Retailers are now sharing consumer information among third parties without your consent. There are employers who have begun to monitor their employees' private communication while they're working. Okay. If you're using a employer laptop, a smartphone, a tablet, the likelihood, the possibility is now there technologically that they can monitor what you're doing with those devices. The third one is this. How many of you, first of all, I asked you about brushing teeth, so maybe this is a bit more personal. Let me ask you this question. How many of you exercise regularly with smartphones that actually capture what you're doing? Those wonderful smartphones, blood pressure, steps, all that kind of stuff. So a few of us. Those apps can now technically share that information with your health insurance company. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Right? Or even the pizza company. Imagine you call and then the pizza company says, what would you like? And you say, well, I'd like this with extra cheese, extra mozzarella, and so on. And then they say, well, according to your records, actually, you shouldn't be taking extra cheese. Right? So I'm going to give you a lean vegetarian pizza, which will be 10-inch, not 12-inch or whatever. Okay. So I'm giving you a bit of the example. So the question, the second part of your question, Yvonne, was really around what can we do? So I would argue that this coming year has to see progress on 3 fronts. The first is that we must see a organized public demand for greater transparency and accountability from our government and from other governments who are interacting with our government, and from corporations, whether they be Kenyan corporations or foreign corporations. Secondly, we must individually and collectively invest in secure technologies. We must start thinking about using encrypted messaging. We must use privacy tools, VPNs, in order to protect yourself from the invasions that are likely to come. And thirdly, we must build solidarity among ourselves, right? Authoritarianism thrives in isolation, like it just wants to target Irungu and go after him. But when you have 56 million Kenyans saying the same thing, demanding the same rights, it is actually impossible to gather that. So as I close, allow me just to end with a couple of people that I would like to just kind of acknowledge from this year in this context. I'd like to acknowledge Billy Mwangi, the young digital content creator who was abducted for 14 days just over last Christmas. Around about this time, he disappeared. And it took a lot of work by human rights organizations and the public, and his was arrested for sharing memes and cartoons on the internet. I'd like to acknowledge Morara Kebasu, who reminded us that Facebook can be a tool for social accountability and actually can bring some sense into these performative claims that government makes about development that are actually false. I'd like to acknowledge Rose Njeri, the coder who was arrested and held in Central Police, no, she was not in Central Police Station, in a Nairobi police station for 88 hours, simply because she developed a code for a tool that allowed us to be able to comment on the Finance Bill 2025. Lastly, but one, I would like to acknowledge Hanifa and Adan, who used digital technology to raise 34 million shillings to take care of people who were in hospitals, who needed support after they had been brutalized by the National Police Service. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge Justine Wanda, the comedian who spent all our time trying to lift our spirits, because I know when I listen to her that she doesn't do it feeling at all times safe. She does it because she feels it's the right thing to do, and that in these spaces we too can find humor, we can find wit, and we can find that spirit that has kept this country going for the last 60 years of independence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irungu. And an interesting space that is turning out to be, not just for the fight and push for good governance in the country, but will likely be just as important in the run-up to the 2027 general election in the country, for which we are now, I dare say, fully in campaign mode in this country, wherever you go. And so as we focus on that, Annette, maybe you can speak to us about how to promote and strengthen social cohesion and to safeguard human rights in the lead up to that. This is the month of December. I assure you, January will be full of campaign all the way until August 2027. Campaigns and elections are naturally divisive, but in this country more so for the reasons that I think we all understand. So what are some of the strategies towards promoting social inclusion and access to human rights in the run-up to that general election in 27?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that question. I'm sure when we all had 2027 general election, we are all like, oh my God, what will happen? We are all waiting to see what happens. And having that what we witnessed when we had our by-election, everyone, our question is, what happens when we get to 2027? And as Yvonne mentioned, it's like we are in campaign mode right now. I work with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. This is a commission that was born against after the two 2007 general election, when we had the post-election violence. That is when NCIC was born to help promote peaceful coexistence among Kenyans, and this and also regardless of the communities that we all come from. And as we have this conversation, there are three non-negotiables that we can't fail to mention. We can't fail to mention the shield of human rights. We also can't fail to mention the role that dialogue plays in this country, and also the issue of accountability. As I talk about accountability, when we mention elections, what comes to our minds? We are thinking politicians. What role are our politicians playing? As we sat in this room today, we are all different. Different religion, different communities. But as we sat here today, how many of us know neighbor wako ni which tribe? When you sat, did you ask your neighbor, when you are which tribe? We didn't do that, but when we sat here, we are all Kenyans here to celebrate the International Day for Human Rights, right? Then what happens when if a politician walks in today and tells us in this room, guys, as we approach 2027, please do not vote for Tribe A. Otherwise, if you vote for Tribe A, we will all be evicted from Nairobi County. You will now turn and you want to know, is this Tribe A? When you go home, you want to know, is my neighbor from this Tribe A that actually wants to evict us? As we move towards 2027, and as we have this conversation about peaceful elections and cultivating a culture of peace when we have peace, at NCIC, one thing that we are doing, we have something that we are calling the Kenya National Action Plan against hate speech. We all know, we have all heard about hate speech. And one thing that we are doing in this Kenya National Action Plan against hate speech, we are bringing stakeholders together. It's a multi-agency approach. And these stakeholders, we're bringing in ODPP, DCI, all the stakeholders that take part in these processes, having a conversation and forging a way forward. Number two, what we are also doing, we have developed a national code of practice for misinformation and disinformation, which is online, which Mr. Irungu mentioned. There is so much online. Hate speech and incitement has now moved online. I'm sure every day you see a message online about incitement, and some of them are actually even fake news. Politician A said this, or person A is inciting others against this community. So we are having a code of practice which will also be shared among, and we also create sensitization even with media houses, and also to make sure that we are all able to identify when we are seeing these messages online. Also, we are working on a collaboration with the Communication Authority of Kenya, and in this, we are developing an election preparedness matrix, where we are going to look at how ready are we as we approach election. Also, when we are talking about the marginalized communities, we are having community dialogues. At the grassroots levels, we want to talk to Kenyans. As you know, one thing for sure, when we approach elections, you find some communities, we hear about border conflicts. And these things, you might find there is a certain border that they have conflict towards election time. That is what politicians focus on. That is when politicians will go to, when they are doing their campaigns, they are going to remind those people, by the way, border yenu imefika hapa. You see, and that is, you are inciting these people who have been living in harmony all along before the election time. They are living in harmony. So what are we doing? We are empowering these communities, letting them know these politicians who is coming to divide you does not have the best interest. The best interest is to actually bring you together. If there is a conflict, how can we solve this conflict as together? We have district peace committees. These are people who are on the grassroots levels who are going to address these conflicts that arise firsthand in these communities. We are also having transgenerational conversation. We know that conversations are now shifting. The older generation and the Gen Zs. We are having this conversation with the youth and the older people. Let us see how we can make sure that we have a peaceful nation. The Gen Z was a very strong movement. Gen Zs in the house. It was a very huge movement, and I'm sure if we have the same strength to push for peace in this country, we will definitely have peace. Another thing that we have Recently, last month, we launched something we are calling Guidelines for Conducting Peaceful Election. Pass by our booth, get a copy, as we continue to in the strive to ensure that we have a peaceful country. Also, we have, as you know, I'm sure the issue of NCIC and hate speech comes on. I'm sure Yvonne has that question next to ask me about the prosecutorial powers and what we are doing about that. We are, number one, we are working towards sensitizing the citizen about what is hate speech. Number two, as we say, we are also having the review of our act, which is actually in Parliament at second reading stage. We want to also expand our definition of hate speech. It's very limited, to move from just ethnic hatred and to also include other things, as times have changed and things are now are different. So other than what the strategies that NCIC has put in place, as citizen, what I would want to say is we can never outsource peace. Peace is a shared duty that we can share as citizens together. This means us calling out a politician who is giving insightful remarks. Number two, as citizen, it is us scrolling past and reporting those hateful messages that we are seeing online. Number three, for peace, it's for political parties. Who are these people that we are giving our tickets to champion for our candidates? Are they people who promote peace? Could it be, if you're caught inciting Part A, this community, you know that your ticket can be revoked. I'm sure if politicians know, if I incite people today, my ticket will be revoked. Trust me, they won't be inciting us. They will be, actually, they will be pushing their manifestos, which are to bring change to us. We are nearing the election period. Let us always strive to make, and together we can build a very cohesive nation. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you, Annette. So some great, contributions from here and from our panelists. I have, I think, some time for about 3 comments. This is how we're going to go. One male, one female, and one representing persons with disability. May I please ask that those questions, or rather comments, are brief so that we can give at least the 3 some time to comment. We want to close our time here, but maybe I can, if you allow me, with your permission, nominate somebody from the United Disabled Persons of Kenya, UDPK. Sunday Eric, yes. We'll start with you, and then if anyone else, just put up your hand and we will get the mic to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Sandy from the United Disabled Persons of Kenya, which is really a federation of persons with disabilities. This year has been quite a high year for the 2025 Act. There are various things around in the 2025 Act. There are various things around access to justice, and we know that right at the grassroots level, we have seen cases where community of persons with disabilities are, denied even access to, justice, how they, go to the police, and also how there's that component of providing disability accommodation in courts, and also how the office of the ODPP support also persons with disabilities also to have access to justice. So really mine is just how better can we also make sure that these laws and all that is actually now translated to supporting the community of persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunday Eric, for that, and indeed ensuring that access is granted to all. Hand up. Okay. Is there anyone from this side? I see you. Is there anyone from this side of the room? Hamna maoni? I'm sure iko. Yeah. There are no women who want to speak? Yeah, thank you. All right. So let's have you and then we can pass on the mic to her. Then we'll come to this side. Just now, because there's 4 in total, let's just keep it brief. My apologies.
My name is Anthony Muoki. I work for National Police Service Commission as a psychologist. So my concern is on mental health. Statistically speaking, at any given time, it's estimated, according to WHO, that 1 in every 4 individuals are likely to experience a mental health concern at a point in their lifetime. Putting those statistics into consideration, how much more, besides the guidelines and policies that have already been shared, can we incorporate that and implement that deliberately as part of human rights? Because I feel if we don't address mental health, then we are not future ready for human well-being. And health is a human right. Thank you so much.
It is indeed. Thank you very much for that reflection. And some food for thought for us. Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I am Melissa Kasili, and I am a first-year student from the Technical University of Kenya. I am a human rights enthusiast, and I am so happy to be in a room full of people who inspire me on a daily basis. So because I'm in a room with policymakers, and it's not every day I get the chance to speak, I believe that my biggest daily essential is the freedom of expression. But now there's this challenge that comes upon I'm a digital person. Most of the time I am in a digital space. To find me physically, it's harder. So I want to challenge all the policymakers here that I want to feel safe in my digital space, to know that my data is secure, to be safe from online digital violence that is very prevalent against young people and especially women. To be a woman and to be vocal online is a very dangerous thing. So I want to challenge everyone here to think of how we can make our online platforms safer for everyone, for our children, for our young generation, because we are the future, and only by securing our future can your future be safe. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Some very good reflections. Yes, on this side of the room, maybe, yes, we can get some assistance. Did I see? So there's a hand here. I see you. Sorry, there's lights in my face. So Vincent, there is the gentleman up there. Then I think I saw Peter's hand up. All right. So, but we can start at the top. Yes. Just keep your hand up so you can see you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the chance to speak. First of all, I would like to start by exchanging my pleasantries. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the presenters on stage. Thank you for presenting. We have been following through, but there still remain questions like this human right that we're calling essential. It's essential to everyone. But in as much as corruption is still a stagnant stuff in this, we still don't have a taste of it. Look at the, for example, the judiciary. We've heard from the judiciary. We have a lot of cases stagnant in the judiciary, and yet we are only getting about the resource and stuff. So apart from looking at the resources and everything that we are talking about to push the judiciary ahead, so let's also look at the victims who are being in this. For example, we have people, we have cases that are still stagnant, and we have people who are in jail, and yet they are very innocent. And also to bring to my last conclusion is that, for example, for instance, if I'm going to give example, is we have cases of defilement. And especially in nowadays, if you try to consider the young boys, and the defilement cases have been so rampant. This is because we have people who are starting to turn these defilement cases into business thing. You are arrested today for something that you don't know, and then someone takes you aside and asks you to pay for that, so that they can maybe resolve the case. And if you don't, then you face the jail term. So what are the measures that the judiciary you're putting ahead to ensure that this is coming to an end? Because before you take ahead those judgment and everything, let's ensure that we have a very good background checkup on the cases, on the source of these cases, so that we can have that order of right. And then speaking of the right of freedom of speech and everything, that's what is presenting us here today. Because if we didn't have that right here, then we could not be here in this room. So let us the law that's supposed to protect that, let it be enforced, so that we are able to express ourselves accordingly and present what there are a lot of things that are going on that people fear to speak out, because maybe someone thinks you get arrested for that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We didn't get your name, sir?
My name is Justin Boy. I'm a
Justin.
student from the University of Nairobi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your views. I think we will take the final comment here from Peter. Peter Kiama is here, third row.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the input and the interventions by all the panelists. Very good quality, helping us to understand the state of the nation. I have two comments, very brief. One is that the PS spoke very well, but then she left before we could engage. I don't know whether there's a person from the ministry who can take the message, because she is in charge of a very critical docket that concerns the topic today, the fulfillment of human rights. And when I look at where she's placed at the center of the fight against the weakening of constitutional commissions and independent offices. She is our point person for this country to ensure that the Kenya National Commission, IPOA, and all others remain independent and properly facilitated to protect us. However, we are seeing a trend where the executive is diluting those functions by establishing other executive units to handle the same things that we gave the constitutional commissions. She is sitting in the office that is supposed to implement the Victims Protection Fund. I was going to ask her what budget has she set aside to ensure that the Victims Protection Fund is operational. But she's not here. If somebody is here from the ministry of the Mayor's office, kindly take that question to her, because we are disappointed. It's been 2014 up to now is 11 years without a Victims Protection Fund, yet we gave ourselves a law. The other point I want to raise is that myself and Brother Otiende have a common interest. And the common interest is that both of us are passionate about the Kenya Police Force.
Service. Or force.
Oh,
I just want to...
It's service in the documents, yes.
Oh,
yeah. So you're right. You're right. Yes. Yes. Our dream is a service. And I'm sitting next to a internal affairs, and that's.
And then we can close on that one. And then we can close on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Kiama, for your question and probably a challenge. I want to say that Article 244 provides for police professionalism, and Section 41 of the National Police Service Act provides, if my memory serves me right, the County Policing Authority. To make it clear, in the year 2022, I think around the month of October, the Inspector General, in fact, the Inspector General then did a letter that was copied to all the police county commands and effectively giving effect to that community policing, county policing authority. There has been a problem which would probably, and I think that may have informed the ongoing national policing policy review that is currently underway, to look into some of those impediments that are not allowing the implementation of certain policies, which are in fact propagated by the fact that there is a bit of conflict. Because County Policing Authority provides that the head of that authority be the county governor. And the flip side of it is that it is the Inspector General who is supposed to provide funding for it. So there's a bit of ish there, and probably that envisaged review of the national policing policy, which is currently underway by the Ministry of Interior, will probably have that sorted out. I don't know if that effectively answers your question, but on the ground, we are very active, even in the booming of what I just talked about, the silo, is in fact community policing in effect. So we are really working towards making community policing robust, save for those impediments that I've just spoken about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to give a warm round of applause, please, to all the panelists and to yourselves for participating in this robust conversation. So many thanks to you, Annette Wamboe from the NCIC, Irungu Houghton from Amnesty International, Commissioner of Police, Charles Otiende, thank you very much. Francis Makori from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Then, of course, we also had Festus Kinoti from IPOA, editor. Adhiambo, thank you very much for your very robust contributions. From the Feminists for Peace, Rights and Justice, Dr. Bernard Mogesa, who's from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and Eric Kivuva from the Law Society of Kenya. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, very much. And thank you to you for this. And it is our hope that you continue with the work of upholding human rights in the various spaces in which we all work and live. So please give all of us, please, a warm round of applause once again. Asante. I will kindly ask our panelists to take their seats. Thank you very much for being here with us. And as they do, I don't know, do you want to take a photo of the panelists? Would be great. Festus and editor, could you join us up here as well? Maybe you can take a photo of the panelists as they close. Let's try and remember our time here together. Maybe you could move forward. Just move forward away from the seats. Yeah, Festus, editor, please. Great, let's have that photo and then maybe do a nice long live, fist up in the air, smile. Like we said, today is also a celebration of human rights and the work that each of us is doing in that regard and in our spaces.
Long live human rights defenders, long live! Long live! Long live human rights defenders, long live! Long live! Long live women, human rights defenders, long live!
Asante sana. Thank you very much. Please take your seats. And as they do, at that, what a great conversation and what a great time that we have had here this morning. And the right way to close would be to have some closing remarks here from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Anne-Marie Okutoi, who is the Director of Research at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Please give her a round of applause as she comes to close this for us. There is a podium there for you. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, all protocols observed, good afternoon. On behalf of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, together with our partners, the OHCHR and the Center for Human Rights Policy of the University of Nairobi, as well as the Office of the Attorney General, allow us to extend our deepest gratitude to all of you for joining us as we commemorate this year's International Human Rights Day. Can we all applaud ourselves? Today, we have been reminded that human rights are not abstract ideals. They are the lived realities of our people, isn't it? The hopes of our youth, and I'm happy we've heard the voices here. The courage of our human rights defenders. We celebrate you today, and the promise that we owe to our future generations. So, ladies and gentlemen, your presence today, we've seen the government representatives, we've seen the United Nations representatives, the diplomatic corps, the CSOs, we have seen the academia led by the University of Nairobi, we have seen the human rights defenders, the diverse communities, and members of the public, really. And for us, we say this is a strong indication that when we stand together, human rights are strengthened. Our appreciation to our guest of honor, the Principal Secretary for the State Department for Justice, Human Rights, and Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Judith Pareno. And for the powerful keynote address, I think we can all from the United Nations agencies. We have the OHCHR, UNIS, UNESCO, UNODC, UN Women, UNAIDS, UNICEF, and UNDP. Asanteni sana. The Kenyan, thank you very much. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, led by our chairperson, Ms. Clarice Oganga. Thank you so much. The Office of the Attorney General and State Department of Justice, led by the PS. Let's applaud them. The Center for Human Rights and Policy, that's the CHRP of the University of Nairobi. Thank you very much. The Law Society of Kenya, we had our president here, as well as the Nairobi chapter chair. Thank you very much. Amnesty International, led by Mr. Irungu. Asante sana. All Social Justice Centers Working Group. Comrade Power. Thank you so much. Independent Policing Oversight Authority, led by a director. Thank you very much. The National Police Service, Commissioner, please pass our appreciation to the Inspector General. At the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, please pass our appreciation to the Chair. The National Council for Persons with Disabilities, Asanteni sana. The National Steering Committee on Peace Building and Conflict Management, thank you very much. We have the National Gender and Equality Commission, our sister commission, thank you very much. We have the Interreligious Council of Kenya, thank you. We heard from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Asante sana. Our other sister commission, the Commission on Administrative Justice, thank you very much. And lastly, the National Police Service Commission. Asanteni sana. In a very special way, we want to appreciate the Planning Committee led by my colleagues from KNCHR, the OHCHR, the Office of the Attorney General, and the CHRP. Thank you so much for your tireless commitment and hard work that has culminated to these wonderful celebrations. These commemorations would not be possible without you. So let's applaud them in a very special way. To our host, the University of Nairobi, we are entirely grateful and humbled to have this celebration in your very esteemed institution. Thank you for hosting us. To all of you, our distinguished guests, our participants, and I'm so happy to see such a diverse audience from all corners of the country, from all ages. Thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedule to come and join us for this celebration. And indeed, we honor you because this is your commitment in championing for human rights. Please applaud yourselves. As we conclude, may we carry this year's message in our hearts and in our action, that dignity, freedom, and justice are not just gifts, but they are rights that we are entitled, all of us, just by being human. So let's defend them every single day. As we close, allow me to ask you to repeat this motto, which is the Commission's motto. Haki, when I say haki kwa wote, you say kila wakati. And when I say kila wakati, you say haki kwa wote. Can we re-energize ourselves so that we can, that's our commitment as we leave this wonderful room? Are you ready? Haki kwa wote na kila wakati. May that be our motto in everything that we do. Asanteni sana. We have come to the end of these celebrations, but before we leave, just a few announcements. One, if we could please take a group photo so that this can be a memory that we will have with us. So please don't leave. Our communication team will be able to guide us on how we will do that. Secondly, lunch and refreshments are served. So please do not leave. Feel free, use these opportunities to interact with each other, network. Please, for the youth, do not shy away from engaging with these dignitaries, as we mentor each other, as we re-energize each other with regards to championing for human rights. So let's continue networking as you leave. Enjoy the lovely exhibitions, and we thank our partners that is outside there. Please grab a copy of our human rights material and be our voices in the societies that you come from. Thank you very much, and may God bless us. May God bless Kenya.
Viva, comrades, viva. More power to the people, more power. All power to the people, all power. I request that being an International Human Rights Day, we must finish with wimbo wa mapambano. Naomba tusimame, all of us. Comrades, power. Hands on your chest. Kupigwa na kupokonywa maisha hakutatuzui sisi wananchi kunyakuwa uhuru wetu na haki ya jasho letu haki ya jasho letu. Tumekata kupiga magoti mbele ya wauaji. Bila shaka si pia ni watu, hali ya utumwa tumekata ya utumwa tumekata. Tutanyakuwa mashamba yetu wetu, tupiganie uhuru wetu, tuikomboe elimu yetu, utamaduni na viwanda vyetu, komboe maduni na viwanda vyetu. Sisi hatutaki kudhulumiwa, hatutaki tena mauaji, ili kupetuliangushe haki na uhuru zichanue, uhuru zichanue na haki zetu, na haki zetu wa Kenya, tupiganie na uhuru wetu, na wa Kenya, uhuru wetu wa Kenya, tupiganie na katiba yetu Kenya, katiba yetu wa Kenya, tutekeleze na comrades wetu wa Kenya, Kenya, na comrades wetu wa Kenya, tuwakumbuke. Ole yo! Viva comrades, viva! Long live our rights, long live! Forward with social justice, forward! Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the same note, just as you are standing, we want to do the picture on the front side. So just move yourself slowly and come to the podium. On both sides, there are ways in. So mtu wa mic.